I want to talk about this idea that it's not your fault you're addicted. And we're going to talk about specifically pornography addiction. And I want to get your thoughts down below and what you think. But when it comes to addiction, I mean, specifically pornography, there is a lot of shame that's rooted in pornography addiction. And you can say the same for any addiction. But there also the role of your genetics, the role of early exposure are all really important when it comes to your overall predispositions and being addicted in general. And so take someone who is, let's say, 11 years old. Right now, the average age for someone who is exposed to pornography is 11, and it's going down, which is kind of crazy. So the age is getting younger and younger. But take someone who's 11, and they stumbled across pornography, or one of their friends showed them pornography. And at first, it kind of freaks the kid out, right? But over time, the more he thinks about it, he gets a little curious. And so he ends up going to actually seek it out and try and find more of that, whatever that was. He's not quite sure what it was. But at that point, he then starts to go back more and more to find this pornography. And he comes to feel that he feels good when he looks at pornography. And so every time that his parents are fighting, every time he's stressed at school, every time his friends are mean to him, or he's stressed, anxious, worried, whatever, he finds himself going back to pornography over and over again. So what started out as a harmless thing that his friends showed him or that he stumbled upon ended up turning into a compulsive addiction with pornography. So at that point, would you say that it's that kid's fault that he is now addicted to pornography? Let's say years down the road, he's 17, 18 years old, and he's been viewing pornography at least once a week for 5, 6 years. Is it his fault that he got to that point? Or is it simply this early exposure that first started out as a coping mechanism? Obviously, 11 years old, you don't really know what's going on at that time. And so would you think that because of that early exposure and because of some possible other predispositions as far as his genes go, chemistry goes, all of that, is it his fault that he's now an addict to pornography? And my personal belief is that it wouldn't be that kid's fault that he's addicted. But that doesn't mean that you can just use that as an excuse, right? You can't just go around saying, man, I started viewing pornography when I was really young, and now I'm totally addicted, and there's nothing I can do about it. It's not my fault. I started viewing this when I was young. That's not a healthy way to go about that either. It's not very helpful. And I do think that although it's not your fault that you've gotten into this position, it is your responsibility to actually get up and fix it. It's your responsibility to change. And it doesn't matter when you were exposed. It doesn't matter when or how long you've been addicted or at what age you started watching pornography. It's now your responsibility to make a change. Along those lines, kind of going to backtrack a little bit, so bear with me. We're going on a little tangent. But recently, there have been several studies done around genes and behavior and experiences. So the study wanted to find out if your experiences or your behavior can actually change your genes. And what they came to find was that behavior and what you experience doesn't add anything to your DNA or your genes. It doesn't even take away anything. That can't happen. Nothing you can do can actually take away your genes or add new genes, whatever. But what they came to find was that your behaviors and what you experience can actually influence how your genes show up. Okay? And so over time, as you continually watch pornography, your genes change. They adapt in the way that they actually express themselves and show themselves. So when you view pornography, you start releasing less and less dopamine over time with the same amount of stimulus. So you have to continue to add more, which is why generally pornography use keeps getting more extreme, because you need to get more extreme to release more dopamine. And what's interesting about this is that the way that these genes are expressed, the way that they show up, can be transferred to your kids. And so if you currently are struggling with addiction, with any type of addiction, the way that your genes have adapted and the way that they are expressed can be passed down from generation to generation. So if your parents or your grandparents struggled with some kind of addiction, then you can be what's called predisposed to this to addiction in general. Your genes may react differently to certain stimuli, where someone whose parents weren't addicted to anything may react differently to the same stimulus. Does that make sense? So I think that simply adds on to the argument that it's not your fault that you're addicted. And obviously different factors go into that as well. But that's another interesting one that I was thinking about. Now, what you run into are things like shame, guilt, anxiety. These are all things that we talked about in yesterday's episode with that young man, right? And these things can be blockers when it comes to your addiction. And so that's just why it makes it so hard to actually start that road to recovery. So what do you guys think? When it comes to addiction, is it your fault that you're where you're at today as far as having a hard time controlling this addiction? Or is it your fault that you got here to begin with? Now, obviously, I do think that everyone would agree that it is now your responsibility to actually change and to start to become the person you want to be rather than using all these excuses. But if you don't think that, then let me know down below and let's chat. But thanks for watching, and we'll talk to you tomorrow. Love you guys.